Hello, hello, friends and gamers. I'm the Web3 Gamer, and I'm here with Jeff Outlaw, the Chief Experience Officer of YOM. And I meant to ask you this before we started. Is your last
Okay.
name really Outlaw?
It truly is. I know. I get that question all the time, but the way that my grandfather said it was he was an outlaw for 80 years and they never caught him.
That's pretty awesome. I was going to say, it immediately, I'm a big fan of Westerns in the Old West, and it immediately makes me think of that. And so I think it's a really cool last name to have, but I'm glad other people think that too and pester you about it.
Here's things. Yeah.
But how's it going, man? Glad to have you on the show.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. I appreciate the exposure and getting a chance to talk to more people about what we're building. So it's going to be fun.
Right. And so we were talking earlier. I have to ask. So what is a chief experience officer?
You want the short version or the long version? I can take, I'll try, or maybe I'll go right between those two.
Let's go between those two. Yeah.
All right. So my experience going back, I've been making video games since 2000. So back in the GameCube and PlayStation 2 days. And I started off as an artist and an animator, but I moved into production or was a producer for the bulk of my career. After about 7 years of animating, I moved into a management role. So the producer, game studio, they handle the schedule, they handle the budget, they coordinate the project. They're not the design director or anything like that. They're the ones who coordinate. They're left brain and right brain usually. But you have a director of the game, and then you have a producer who's kind of modifying the schedule. So that was bulk of my career. When I came into YOM, the question was, do I sign on to this role as a COO, the Chief Operations Officer? But I had already spent about 3 years doing economy designs inside of metaverse spaces and inside the blockchain and Web3 stuff. And I felt like if I got stuck into a COO role, I would get away from the fun of the economic designs and tokenomics of games. So I said, is there a way we could split the difference? So I don't get the COO role. I stay in the C-suite, but something that also lets me talk about design and work with partners and that kind of thing, which is another part of my career. So we landed on the Chief Experience Officer. So I still do some COO type events, like I manage our backlog and our task list and those kinds of things. But at the same time, I get to do some level of blue skying about what we can do with our technology.
Okay, that's really cool. I also love in this space how many like veterans from the traditional gaming industry like bridge, and there's more. The more I talk to people, the more and more there are. And being like a lifelong gamer, like it's always fun. I'm curious, are there any particular games that like from traditional gaming you just had a lot of fun working at that you want to give like a shameless plug to, or if you're allowed to even talk about them? I don't know if you are at this point.
Ones that I was on, or the ones that I've played?
Say that again.
The ones that I've developed myself, or the ones that I've played?
The ones you develop yourself. Yes.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, there was interestingly enough, one of the last GameCube games that I did, and this is going way back, was a game called Geist, and I was the lead animation and character manager. And the best part about this game was it was like one of the last adult, or horror themed games that came out on the GameCube. But it was kind of not a huge title. It was fun for us, and we spent a lot of time doing it. I slept under my desk to ship it. But about 4 years or 3 years after I shipped it, I met up with a cousin of mine down in Texas who I maybe have seen him in my lifetime, maybe 6 times. And at this family reunion, and he's like, man, I really loved Geist. I'm like, well, how did you know I was even on it? He's like, oh, I watched the end credits. So not only did he finish the game, but he also watched the end credits. And unfortunately, the way that we had done the game, the end credits only ran once. So you had to actually pay attention to it. And he caught my name in it, and he's like, yeah, I figured there's only one Jeff Outlaw in the gaming industry. And I knew it had to be you. So that I very much liked the game. I liked the team I was working with when I did it, and that little fun little interaction with my cousin, who I don't see very often, was kind of put it on the top of my list of games that experiences I've made. I made a lot of VR projects too that I'm very proud of, and I'm probably proud of a lot of the projects. But I always go back to Geist. It was one of the first titles I shipped and one of the most fun ones.
Well, that's really cool because I'll admit I remember playing Geist when I was younger, and I liked it because I was really liked horror games. So like right now, like I love that the Silent Hill 2 remake came out, and so I've been playing that. But I think it was at that age where like GameCube was one of my favorite systems, and I didn't have the technical ability to get through it. So at some point, like I think I just watched my cousin finish it because he was more technical and able to do it. But it's funny. I actually remember seeing that, like that's a game I would talk to people about, and people who like horror games always know Geist, but then people who don't know horror games are like, what game is that? And I'm like, it was a great horror game on the GameCube that I felt got overshadowed by the big things of the time, which was zombies, So Resident Evil 4,
right.
it was
right.
Everybody, zombie fever was going on full swing then, so but that's really cool. I actually, again, I love that. I love meeting people who, console kid through and through. I didn't have a nice PC. Nowadays, it's weird seeing how everybody has nice PCs, and like console feels like it's like an older generation thing.
Yeah, that's totally true. But if you look hard enough on YouTube, you'll find the whole run through of Geist if you're that kind of curious.
I definitely will. Yeah, I mean that's the thing I do when I'm working in my free time. I have two monitors, so I'll always be watching some playthrough of something while I'm working on something, just because it's fun to have. And plus, there's some now. I'm sure as you can agree, as you get older, I'm like I have more games than ever want to play and less time to play them.
Oh, totally true. And the time has gone away. It's hard to find the time when you've got a family and everything, and
right.
doing a startup like we're doing now. Find time to break away to play the games.
Right.
Harder and harder to do.
Right, completely. Well, so then, like at the end of the day, what is YOM aiming out to achieve, and what is its end goal?
Yeah, so YOM, the end goal is quite a bit larger. Let me start with what YOM is first. YOM is a decentralized network. It's a DePIN that allows for AAA quality games to be played through the web browser on any device. So those people who don't have a gaming console, or they have a low-end laptop or something like that, and they still want to play the high-quality Unreal games, what we do is we enable those games to be streamed through a web browser, and that does away with the two issues that really the problem with cloud gaming. It fixes cloud gaming is what we do. Cloud gaming doesn't really work. A lot of people don't use it. A lot of studios don't use it because it's expensive to host on Amazon and probably only going to get more expensive going on. So any kind of cloud service is expensive to host. And then the problem like the Google Stadia had was if it's on a central server, if the game is playing off a central server and trying to find the end user, if the end user is too far away, the game can lag really bad and then it's not playable for everybody, right? So Google had a pretty good shot at it, but again, the central server model doesn't work. So a decentralized network like we're building, we make available to people the ability to turn their own gaming rigs into a node on our network. And then we pay them for the amount of game hours that they stream through their computer. So it's a way for, if you have a big gaming computer, you earn passive income because when you're not using your computer, you sell us those GPU cycles and we use them for our network. And then our orchestrator finds the closest node to the end user. So if you hit the website that says, I want to play this game, our orchestrator just says, okay, well, there's a node, in 3 cities over, it'll reach you. I can talk about some of the stats that we've experiments we've run so far. But it solves that latency problem, and then it's so much less expensive for us to be paying people who have gaming units than to pay an Amazon or a big central server. And again, that's only getting more expensive as AI is grabbing all the GPU cycles they can grab from the central servers. Right? So the demand has gone through the roof. So having a decentralized network and having the ability to turn gaming rigs into a network is just a super powerful and good way to work in the future. So that's, you asked where it's going in the future. We're starting with games. It's a big market, but we know that big brands like Nike and Gucci, they've been using Fortnite and Roblox to reach an audience, like a younger audience, because there's not really my son doesn't watch TV anymore, so he doesn't get advertised to it unless it's from a game or if it's from YouTube. That's where he spends all of his time, and games have been this way for a while now. So these big brands are going after like the metaverse spaces or 3D games basically to advertise their products to consumers. So with our network, we can now allow a brand like a Nike to not just use Fortnite or Roblox. They're not going to get the graphic quality they want out of Roblox anyways. But instead, they can make an experience on their Nike.com website, and people can go to their website and play the game. If they're a large brand like Coca-Cola, and you've got like Desante Water and Mountain Dew all in the same umbrella, you can go to the Desante site and play a game there, take the stuff that you've earned on that website or the character you've built or whichever, and go walk over to the Mountain Dew website without leaving the 3D space. What we're really allowing for is the idea that the internet, it doesn't have to stay 2D any longer. It can go into 3D, powered off of our network. It's very inexpensive for brands to do this, and then allowing people to go from one space to another without ever leaving the 3D space, which is something our technology allows for.
Fascinating. So essentially, it's reward. Like, let's say I just have like a powerhouse of a CPU computer, and I've just got like whatever 4090 Ti or something crazy.
There you go. That's
and so you're saying like if I'm like, well, I'm only ever using like 50% of my power at any time while gaming, I can basically market out the other 50% for y'all to utilize for other people.
The play pattern works like this: if you're not using your computer,
right.
The device that we have puts your computer into node mode. Call it
Gotcha.
that. So you don't use it the same. It's more of like an overnight thing, or people who have older gaming rigs that they don't use any longer.
Sure.
If they want to run full time, they can run it full time.
Sure.
Running full time with a decent graphics card can earn up to $400 a month. It's a pretty good return on investment for that full time usage. But that's not generally what people will do. Like my son, when he goes to bed at night or when he goes to school during the day, he'll put it in node mode, and maybe each month he's earning $100. So enough that he can buy a new monitor without asking me, to pay for it. Which
as a kid, like that's a great way. I mean, geez, I'm still, maybe I'm showing my age, but again, I used to just beg my dad. I'm like, what chores can I do for money? If I had $100 for the whole year, I was like, I can get one game. What game do I really want to get? Somebody's like, I can get $100 a month. I was like, I got options now, man. Like,
there you go. Yeah, there you go. It's kind of turning the computer into an Uber for you without having to leave the house. Right. And that's really what the DePIN space is all about, right? It's about earning income from the equipment that you own.
Yeah.
And because your equipment is doing work, it's not like it's security or anything like that. You're actually having to do some work for it. But depending on which network you get involved with, and I think ours has got one of the highest returns because games are so well played. It's such a big market, right? It's a revenue generator. I think we've just built into a really good system for people to earn passive income.
Well, yeah, and I think too, like it's been nice to see there's this shift where like now it used to be you just were agreeing to give your data to all the social powerhouse out there. Now you have to actively read everything and be like, yeah, I'm really okay with you taking my data. The power of having your data, as well as with your devices, of finding a way to monetize it, I guess has been a very interesting transversal to see happen, but I think all in a net benefit for the user, obviously. It probably trickles down in a roundabout way. I'm sure maybe economists or maybe people in marketing would argue. I think that's a big argument with marketing right now. Is they're like, the reason marketing is getting more and more expensive is it used to be you could just spam it to everyone, and now you really have to now you have to spam so much. You're just hoping you get some end result user, versus before you were like, well, I know I'm getting targeted users. So I'm not a marketing guy. That's just what I've heard from other people. Maybe you know better than I.
Yeah, no, I'm also not a marketing guy, but I play one on TV kind of thing.
Right.
I've had some really great marketing guys I've worked with in the past, and we have some good ones now that we work with. And it's interesting that the whole, the way that they think through problems and try to, like you said, segment the market and find the right ones to market to has been very interesting. With our unit that we sell to people that we make available, it's not inexpensive, but it's not cheap either. I'm sorry, it's not inexpensive, but it's not super high end. It's somewhere in the middle. It's about the amount. It's less than a graphics card would cost, but it's still not. It's not $100 thing. It's more than that. So to get people in, we're talking about. And this is actually some information I found out I didn't realize. The average PC gamer, age-wise, is 38 years old. So it's a much more available. They've got cash on hand,
right.
And they can make investments, right? And this is what this is, right? This is an investment. So making it available when you try to target that market, we sell to gamers because we're assisting with games and we want to reach the gaming market. But we're also looking for those people who have a high-end gaming system and want to invest in their system, that add a little bit more than just the graphics card to their system. So it's an interesting demographic that we have to go after when we do our marketing. But I think we're going to thread that needle really well. I think there's going to be, we've already had signs. We've sold, a small amount already to get some people who are already interested in build up our alpha network, and it's been working out really well. But the matter of getting that marketing push out even wider, which we're going to plan to do next year, it's going to be very interesting to see how it all pans out.
Well, sure. So then, are you saying is there like some sort of physical device that plugs into the PC to actually to put it in in like node mode, as you were saying?
Yeah, it's basically an external hard drive with a specialized version of Linux installed on it.
Gotcha.
that we've designed and modified. And what you do is you reboot your computer off of this, and then we've done it as a separate device for this, like 4 or 5 different reasons why. We looked at other DePINs that are doing like a software install into Windows. Mm-hmm. You can't really do games this way because games the computer has to act very fast, right? Mm-hmm. And Windows is bogged down already, so you want to be operating off of a Linux system, right? So that a piece of it is that. A piece of it is this is a 2 terabyte drive, right? So it's a lot. It takes up a lot of storage. And if I were to ask a gamer with a gaming machine to segment off 2 terabytes from his hard drives to make available to us, they're not going to have that space anyways. And then because we have this locked down, you don't have root access to it. You don't have root access to the game data that we're storing on there, which of course that would affect game developers. They wouldn't want that kind of access. But furthermore, we're not installing anything on the node operator's PC at all. Like we don't invade their home system. We don't have access to their home system because we're operating off of a different hard drive. So it keeps the node operator also safe. Mm-hmm. So all those reasons, the speed, the security, those are the reasons why to have it as a separate drive. And when we see other systems who are saying, you just download this software and now you're a node on our network, for games, that can't possibly work. They can do a portion of the problem, but they can't do the most important portion, which is the video streaming that we have to do when we stream a game. They can the two components of the system are the streaming nodes, which I'm talking about with the external hard drive, and then the orchestrator or matchmaker that says this node is close to this end user, so pair those two together. Now, we're seeing some DePIN projects who are saying, okay, we'll make the orchestrator on a DePIN and we'll still stream off of a cloud. But again, that doesn't solve the latency issue. So again, we're skeptical of those other formats. We think that orchestrator will be centralized. We'll have that on a central server because you can, right? The most important piece to get away from the lag issue that Stadia had is to have the streamers be the nodes. That all makes sense? I know it's kind of...
No. It does. So it probably makes more sense to people who really know all the technical jargon. I am not one of those guys. Fully admit that. But with what I do understand, at least about the issues with streaming and the lag, and you were talking about, and kind of hosting and all that, I get what you're saying. What I was going to ask then is, so with video streaming, you were talking about the issue is this is all browser hosted, correct? Like browser hosted games is what you were saying initially, just utilizing other people's systems.
It's allowing the high-end, the Unreal games, basically. Games built in Unreal, like the Grand Theft Auto and those kinds of things, to be able to be played on a web browser for people who don't have the gaming computers.
Right. Okay, gotcha. Well, and then, too, so is that... I guess that was probably one of, like... Was that an issue, like, when you first were starting the company of... Did you all already have that tech, or was that an idea and you're like, all right, now we got to figure out the tech to make it work?
That's a great question. Good job. So, no, what happened was the studio was founded in 2020, and originally they were making metaverse spaces for big brands. Like they did the first TEDx talk in 3D, and they did a project for GlaxoSmithKline, and I say they because I hadn't joined the studio back then. But in 2020, they were building these metaverse spaces for high-end clients. This is all during the rage of the metaverse spaces. But when they were hosting them, they were, again, hosting them on Amazon, and it was just too expensive, even for GlaxoSmithKline, right, who got deep pockets. They, at a certain point, were like, okay, we can't keep on paying these hosting fees because it's not really profitable for us. So the development team here started doing a DePIN, a decentralized network, to solve the problem for themselves before the term DePIN was even coined. So they got going on it, and then at the beginning of this year, we said, okay, let's get rid of that. That's when I joined and our new CEO joined. We got rid of the idea of building metaverse spaces and said, we've got a lot of great game studios that we know that will want to get their content on to more people than just people who own gaming PCs. So let's just focus on the network. And that's what we started doing at the beginning of this year, and where we got to our first alpha test a couple of weeks ago. So it was really a problem solving for ourselves that we ended up where we are now.
Gotcha. No, that's fascinating. Yeah, you're right. It is really interesting to see. There are still plenty of people who have metaverse fever. I'm not knocking it. I think maybe I was just, I don't know. It was weird. Maybe I was past the age point, but some people no, please explain
what happened, right?
Sure.
In that first metaverse, because I was part of a project too that actually just launched their first alpha, and it looks pretty nice from what I'm seeing. The issue with the first wave of metaverse projects in my mind was they were trying to jump right from step 1 to step 12 and not going through steps 2, 3, 4, through 11. They were going right from, we're going to create an immersive world, and you're going to put you on your VR goggles, and you're going to have, all this kind of great immersion feeling. But they weren't solving the problem that we're solving. Right? There was no way to do it on a decentralized cloud, so it was going to be too expensive to host those spaces live all the time. There aren't yet the standardization to make this project interoperable with that project. So they're really big open world games. They're not really metaverses. But I do have a high conviction that a metaverse, the internet will turn into what we think of as a metaverse. All the spaces, your Facebook page will be a Facebook apartment.
Sure.
Right, you'll invite your friends over. You'll play poker as an avatar. He can go to your refrigerator in your apartment, pull out a Red Bull. You'll get some money from Red Bull because you've been advertising the Red Bull in your Facebook apartment, right? And your friend just bought some, so you'll get some kickback from that. Like that whole thing will happen over time, but we can't jump right from the technology is not there to back it up. The internet's not ready. We don't have enough high-speed internet to enough places, and the DePIN network's not set up to support or make it cheap enough to do this. And now we're competing again, GPU cycles. We're competing with AI to pull in the GPU cycles. So that's another thing that's probably going to slow it down.
Sure. Well, I guess what I was saying is that it felt like there was a lot of people who liked the idea of a metaverse, but then didn't know how to execute it and be like, you're here in virtual reality. And you're like, yeah, but what else? And they're like, you're here in virtual reality, versus a lot of games that already were metaversey, so to speak, just eventually added in the VR fact, be like, now you can just be in the game. And people were like, this makes more sense. But to be fair, those games were developed before that idea was a concept. So it's easier for them to just be, here's a back door. It's now a metaverse, so to speak. I mean, Minecraft did that exactly, where they're like, you can be in Minecraft with VR goggles. Now it's metaverse. So you're like, well, it's really just Minecraft from a first person view, right? Like it was already its own ever expanding world. Like,
yeah, again, they're all open worlds, but metaverse in my mind, if you've read the book, from, what's his name again? Matthew Ball, right? Matthew Ball talks about, I got it on my shelf over here as well, but the idea that there's not metaverses, it's a single metaverse, and that really it's like saying the internet, right?
Sure.
I like the way he takes those two concepts and puts them together, and I kind of agree with them, right? There's not all those different metaverses. They're big open world games, which is great, and I love them too. I played a lot of Grand Theft Auto. But the metaverse of them, what it really means is going to be, it's really the 3D internet. The internet in 3D is what I would call the metaverse.
Sure. And like it's funny, even before that term really came around, like that was a sci-fi concept for the longest time in plenty of shows, movies, books. Like everyone was already like the ideation that it was going to get there was already a thing before somebody, I don't even remember who eventually coined the term metaverse or where it finally started clicking. But I mean, VR chat, I think for a lot of people was like their first idea of like, oh, this is what the metaverse, because people are just hanging out, they're doing actions, playing around, doing whatever. But that was my first thing where I was like, this feels very metaversey because these people could be hanging out at home in like their own apartment, but they're all choosing to have these avatars and hang out in this fake room, whatever. But I was like, it was very interesting because I'd meet people be like, yeah, I just hang out with my friends in there for like 2-3 hours and we just talk and chat and do whatever. And I was like, that was the most metaversey it felt for me when it was just a term and seeing it.
Right. And so what it's going to take is a couple of different technologies coming together. You need the blockchain for the transactions. You need the VR. You need really good VR to make it feel immersive. You need a backbone to support it. You need some standardizations to allow people to cross from one side to another. And again, we'll see this over the coming years, but very exciting because again, I think that we recognize that the piece that we're building is an important piece that has to be adopted for the full conversion.
Right. Well, and so then you were talking about how, it's a decentralized network of nodes. Are you utilizing a blockchain or do you have your own system in place or?
Yes, it's a good question again. The way that our system works is that we use our YOM token, which is a Solana-based token. We use it as a payment system for the node operators. So when they purchase a license to operate the node and put that in their wallet, there's a one-to-one connection between the physical unit and that license, and then we're paying whatever wallet's holding the license. We're paying them for the hours that they serve. But the games themselves, they're just any Unreal project. There's no reliance on Web3 at all for the game itself. It allows us actually to be agnostic. And what we do is, for any kind of blockchain transaction, we have our SDK that we've developed has an API that calls up the browser-based wallets, Phantom Wallet or the MetaMask wallet. So if you're on Polygon or you're on an Ethereum chain, if your game is on using any of those other chains as a transaction layer, just because we're on Solana doesn't mean that you only have to be a Solana-based game. You can use any of the chains to do your transaction for your Web3 game. But then if you don't have anyone on Web3, it's just a normal Unreal project that also lives on our network.
Gotcha. So right now it's all browser based with like maybe the hope or dream be that eventually you could find a way to channel this through
we
platforms, like Steam, Epic, things like that in a way. I don't know if that's even possible. I'm just spewing ideas.
So the best way to describe it is you've seen websites already that have a YouTube video embedded into the website, right? You go to the website and they've got a video kind of, Amazon has them on their product review pages. Anywhere you've seen a video, embedded into a website. What our network does is instead of that, if you've ever looked at a page, the code of the page that does that, there's a single line of code that says, go to YouTube and grab this video and put it right here on the website.
Right.
Well, replace that line of code with a line that says, go to the YOM network and pull this interactive stream. So we already have the ability to embed our game inside of a game review article about the game. We've already streamed our first sample game inside of a Telegram channel. We can just send the game around through Telegram, and it opens up inside of Telegram. So any place, and then streaming services are on it too, Netflix, Roku, any of those. You can imagine a day. We tell this story all the time, and we're working with a couple of different partners in this space, where it's called transmedia. You build the assets for an animated series, and then you use those same. You build them in Unreal. You use the same assets from the animated series when you build your game. So the characters look exactly the same one from the other because Unreal is beautiful like this. You can do that. And then your media in a streaming service like Netflix, you're watching the animated show's episode, and at the end of the episode, it asks you, "Oh, do you want to play the game now?" And you just start playing the game without ever leaving Netflix. Either your phone becomes a controller, or maybe you use a Bluetooth controller to your TV in the living room. And then at the end of that game, it takes you to the merchandise site, and you can purchase merchandise. It's a good way because Netflix doesn't want anybody to leave their platform, and they certainly don't want you to go to PC and leave them alone. So having the media go from one to the other and back again is something that we enable with our streaming technology.
Right, so that's a big way you can see the technology not only being applied, it's still your field of expertise and specialty, but it's really getting applied to these other streaming or platform fields in a way to really kind of tie it wholly together.
Yeah, and then again, the idea that you get an Unreal game running inside of Telegram, super powerful for games so right now, if you and I both like a game and it's on Steam, if I like a game, I found a game on Steam that I really want you to play with me, right? I send you the link on Steam, and then I have to wait 3 hours for you to download the game and install it if you want to, if you've got the hard drive space for it. Right. And then 3 hours later, you and I play together. But with what we're talking about with our network is I send you the link to the game, I send you the URL, or I send you the Telegram. I sell it to you in Telegram, and immediately you and I are playing together. And if we like the game, then it could be a sample of the game, and then we go to the full download site to download the full game, or it could be the entire game, depending on how well optimized they are. So again, for the viral spread of a game to get it spread around, because that's one of the other challenges that game development studios have is the market can. Steam especially, the tail on Steam is, the small amount of games that get picked up and do very, very well, and then the drop-off is really fast and hard. And there's a lot of great games that get published that don't get the traction because it's hard to market, right? The game developers are not necessarily marketers. So you've got all these great experiences that aren't getting seen. If it's able to pass it around inside of a Telegram channel or sending people a website, embedding it in an article, you're going to see a lot more spread of these games.
Well, and two things with that. I mean, you really being able to just share it around a Telegram channel, particularly in countries and areas of the world where, smartphones are getting more and more prevalent, but, people may not have the money, the capacity, the infrastructure to have a gaming PC. So that's a big way I could see you onboarding a lot of people who would love to be gamers who just simply are like, if I have a smartphone, I mean, it's why in certain countries like India, mobile gaming is huge because most people there, everyone has a smartphone. Most people do not have a PC or they're not going to have a computer to play on, but a mobile phone or a smartphone almost everybody has and can be able to play certain games that way. I've met plenty of people who they're like, our biggest audience is in India, but that's because we make mobile games, and mobile gaming is huge in India for the last 5-ish years. How long that'll continue, I don't know.
So I just had to write an article, not had to, but I just did an article for our Medium site to talk about cloud gaming. Mm-hmm. And I did some research on cloud gaming and where it's expected to go. And exactly what you're saying, cloud gaming is expected to have it's like the largest sector of growth that's expected in the next 10 years. I think the compounding annual growth rate was something like 43%, which is crazy big, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because you've got the high-speed internet is getting passed around more, and there are more and more people buying mobile devices. But they're going to want to play the high-end quality games, and they can only do it from the cloud gaming. So the sector that we're entering into has got a lot of growth potential. We know this. But we do have to solve that problem of it's too expensive, and it's not, and the latency issue is too big of an issue for people who aren't around a central server.
Right. Well, and then too, like you've seen that with a lot of the bigger companies in traditional gaming. I think the idea of porting COD to a mobile device 10 years ago, people would have laughed at because they would have been like, one, why would I want to play it on a mobile phone? And two, there's no way you're ever going to have a phone powerful enough to play COD on. But then, in a way, they've captured a huge market of people who can play it on a PC or, a console, and then a huge market of people who are like, oh, I want to play COD, I've just never been able to, and I can play it on a mobile device with people across the world. And it's a net win for them because, again, even if the game's free to play, if people are playing the game with friends and they're like, here's a skin, it's $5, $10, or here's a loadout, like eventually people do spend money on games that
Oh
they
yeah.
love to play long enough time.
Yeah, yep. And then those people who are already playing, they even have a good gaming rig at home and they're playing Call of Duty at home, but they have an hour-long commute on a train
Right.
to get off to work. They can take it's the same account and the same game. They're just putting it on their phone. They're playing for another hour while they're on their ride to work. But they've already got an account. It's again pinging the same account. With the cloud gaming network that we're building, you could play against somebody from your phone and they're on their PC, and it'll be the same kind of responsiveness.
Right. Well, and so then do y'all ever worry, I guess, a concern, in an ever world that's always worried about sustainability and energy usage and all that, is that ever something that y'all have had concerns with or thought about with utilizing the spare, space on a lot of these PCs? Or is it kind of like it's a net zero
It's a win for the environment. It's a net win for the environment because, again, those big central servers, first of all, it's hugely destructive just to even build one of those big buildings. And you've seen that they're having to build them next to power plants so they can get enough. They're building power plants to power these large central servers, right? And then the destruction of just building. So they've got all those costs and all the destructiveness it takes to build those central servers. Plus they've got to power them and run them. They run big AC units to keep them all cool. They're having to throw units away and rebuild them because they're doing upgrades and those kinds of things, and then all the maintenance costs. So it's central servers are vastly I wouldn't call it heavily polluted, but their carbon emission of all the central databases think of Amazon is almost equal to Italy's carbon footprint. So it's a lot, right?
Sure.
But what we're doing is your computer is sitting overnight idle anyways. Mm-hmm. So we're just saying, okay, we'll take those systems. You don't have the AC cost because it's probably going to disperse the heat. Any heat that you might generate is going to disperse in your room, and you're not having to run a separate AC unit just to cool it down because it's running like you would normally run it.
Right.
So there's that thing. It's basically taking the underutilized resources that are just going idle and not getting used, and using those as opposed to using a very expensive and very destructive central server.
Sure. No, that makes way more sense. Well, it's almost like there are some, Chia Coin is one that always came to mind back in the day, where it was kind of a similar process of you would download all the mining tools you needed onto a hard drive, and it did the same thing. It was like overnight, it was just using the idle power to like mine Chia Coin, which then you could sell for a profit at some point. How profitable Chia Coin ended up being, or if it's even still around, I can't tell you, but I remember learning about that and thinking it was fascinating, especially because it was one of the few ones where you didn't need a super powerful PC back when mining was like the be-all end-all for a lot of tokens and coins.
Right. Yeah, I had the Red Coin was one that I set up my system to run, REDD.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that chain, I think it's a dead chain now. I don't think it's doing anything anymore.
Yeah, that was a weird one. That was funny because my brother, in a roundabout way, like ended up meeting the founder of that, and he still talks about it, and he's just like, yeah, he's like, there's things we probably could have done better. He's like, but I'm still proud of it. It was one of like the biggest ones at the time, and it got crazy, and some people made a lot of money off it. And I think he's like, I was not one of those people, but he's like, I was the founder, and I did a lot of great things with it. He was a very nice guy whenever I met him. But yeah, it's funny you bring that up. I haven't heard about Red Coin in a very long time at this point. But well, and so I guess too, when you think about like, you're talking about YOM Sports, like these AAA games, and making them accessible from pretty much any platform or device in the future. Do you think this changes the idea of like accessibility and like platform exclusivity?
Yeah, I don't see. It's a good question too. We've had this question put to us: are you guys trying to take Steam out of the equation? And we say no. Really, what we feel like is we're complementary. You can imagine a day again. You go to a Steam site. So if for right now, when I go to Steam or I go to the Epic Store, I have to make that calculation of, okay, do I have to delete a game because my hard drive's getting pretty full? Do I have to delete a game to install this new one?
Right.
And then what if I don't even like it? I've just deleted a game that I was enjoying for a while, and now I can't go back to it because I actually installed a game that I didn't like. So you could see a day on the Steam page or the Epic Store's page where it's, download the game, but you could also play the game first, play the sample. So you can go and enjoy the sample, see if you like the mechanics, see if you're enjoying the lore of the world, and then decide at the end of the sample level, in the same way you used to get a disc that came with like PCU Gamer Magazine, right? You can sample the game for a little bit, and then at the end of the sample, now I can go to the download and download. Now I've been experienced enough to know that I'm going to go ahead and delete the game and free up the space on my hard drive. So we don't necessarily see us competing. There's always going to be a space for the version that currently exists. We're just kind of adding to it, opening up the funnel for some game developers.
Gotcha. No, I mean, and that makes more sense too. I mean, I think the best businesses really complement each other while not stealing each other's market share in a way.
Right. Right.
But I think a lot of people don't think capitalism can exist in that market unless they see it proven through other businesses or other metrics, unfortunately. And I mean, you kind of talked about how you have these other fields you expect YOM to hopefully be applied to, or the ways in which you'd like to apply it in the future. Is there anything that you all currently do now that you feel like maybe is already setting that standard outside of what you're already doing with the hosting on the browser platform and utilizing other people's computers as nodes, and maybe making it decentralized as versus the centralized way of servers as you've been talking about?
Yeah, I think again the revelation that we've had, or the thing that we add that's revolutionary, is the idea that the streaming is done from the. Oh, look, your puppy behind just got the cone on.
I know, right?
Sorry.
No, you're fine. He just he ate a book while I was away. I was out of the country for like 2 weeks before this, and he ate a book, and I had to have stomach surgery. But he's hardy. He's acting fine. He's totally recovered. But yeah, he's in the cone of shame for the time being. But
Funny missed that. We got a new puppy recently, and he was down here chewing on one of my Norman Rockwell books, one of my really nice, big, oversized Norman Rockwell poster books.
Oh gosh,
I about lost my mind. He didn't get through it too much. He just got the spine a little bit.
Anyways, it's a puppy thing, yeah. But continue.
Yeah. What was I saying? I lost my train. What was the train?
I believe we were talking about I was asking you about, like, how the future technologies you might see anything different currently now, or what you've been doing.
Right, the revolutionary part. So the part that we would call revolutionary about YOM is the idea that it's the streaming node that is decentralized, not the orchestrator or the matchmaker. Mm-hmm. Again, we've looked at our competitors, and there are some in the gaming space. Some other DePINs are getting into the gaming space and selling nodes, but what they're selling is the orchestrator node, which really is actually more efficient where you decentralize it than where you decentralize it. So, and they're centralizing again the piece that they really should decentralize, which is the streaming portion. So I think that mindset is part of the big change that we offer. And then the other part of it is, again, as far as I've been able to find, we're the only ones who are making the streaming happen from any URL and inside Telegram and inside of other streaming services. Most of them appear to be building a Steam for Web3. Mm-hmm. Another platform that you pay a subscription to and get to.
Right.
We feel like that's just too constraining of a funnel. What we want to do is open up gaming and really through the internet for anybody who has access to the internet, through any web browser. So I think our business model is also slightly different than the others in the space.
Sure. I mean, I think that's a tall order too. I think some companies have stopped saying it, but there was a while there, I'm sure you saw as much as I did, that every new Web3 platform was like, we want to be the Steam of Web3 games, the Epic Games of Web3 games. And I was like, more power to you. That's a tall order to fill, because I don't even think when those companies came out in traditional gaming, they were expecting it to go the way it did. I think it was just the idea of, hey, wouldn't it be cool if you had an easy platform that you could play all your games in digitally, much like on a console, without having to switch out discs. As simple as that's all somebody was trying to accomplish, and it went nuclear in all sorts of different ways.
Yeah. And again, I still use my Steam account. I still use my Epic account. So I like the idea of being able to download, take a look at those games and have a wish list and all those other important things. So having an aggregator will be important. We'll have one as well. Like we're talking right now to a company who's going to take on the task of being an aggregator, finding all of the YOM streams and putting them onto one YouTube of YOM, basically. So you can hunt and pick, and you can filter through and find the games that you want to play. Mm-hmm. So that'll be part of our system as well. But again, the most important piece is, if you have a company or you have a game that you want to get onto your own website and you want to monetize from your own website, our technology is the one that allows for that.
Gotcha. Well, and I saw too that correct me if I'm wrong, that you all have like an accelerator program for projects and studios. And
we do.
Is that I don't know if that's a grant program, or it's just kind of like a consulting in a way, or a bit of both.
It's a little bit of both, right? We want to help. We want to help studios who want to put our network, and we want to help them both with advice and with financial ability. But right now, that program is pretty quiet because our network isn't live yet. So the important piece for us is, we're at the point now where we've got a node running. We have a single version of this that's running full time all the time in Amsterdam, and I'm able to hear in the States from across the Atlantic. This is one of the surprises we had. They pushed the games off of that node in Amsterdam. It's actually running in one of our developers' home computers, so he's just running it himself. And they were sending around the office. Our tech team is in Amsterdam, and most of our company is in Europe. I'm here in the States. And I just hit the link because I wanted to see what it would feel like. And across the ocean, the lag was still good. I mean, I was able to play the game. It's a third-person shooter, has to be pretty responsive, and I think I hold the highest score in the studio, and so that it plays that well. Now, it's not expected. That was not expected, first of all, because we run that same game inside of a Amazon server in Europe when we were doing test cases, and I can't play that off of Amazon out that far. It's just too laggy.
Right.
What we determined is inside of Amazon there are layers that the broadcast has to come through, and it just slows things down, so it doesn't work that way for across the ocean anyways. Mm-hmm. So that was the first part that was pretty exciting, and then the second part was oh gosh, I'm going to forget the second part. All right, well, I'm going to forget the second part, but it was exciting that we were able to play the game from across the ocean like
sure.
that. Oh, the second part was we're not planning on the actual use case would be more like me here in South Carolina. I could probably reach all the way up to New York City with my node if I'm running a node.
Sure,
because we've got pretty good high speed internet here in the States. Other places in the world, the distance won't be quite that far, but it's still more than. It's not like I can only run people in my neighborhood. It's not anything small like that. It's much larger than that. And then each node, depending on how much VRAM you have on your graphics card, can run between 2 and 8 sessions. So it's not a single one-to-one connection. It's multiple connections you can make. It's almost like doing split screen on your computer. You can run these games again because it's a Linux operating system and not running inside of Windows. Each node can handle more than one session at the same time.
Right, and so I guess that's probably a reasonable concern in the future. Is if the demand outpaces the amount of node users, what's your solution? We
got that covered too. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
I'm curious. What is it then?
Again, I'm going to credit our CTO. He's like every time I threw a concern at him, he's like, "Nope, this is how we handle that," and he's been very good about educating me. So what we have is we're about to announce another one next Tuesday, but we have partners who are kind of there's former Bitcoin mining machines or other kinds of virtual machines that we can have access to that'll handle our overload, or there are games being played in a region that we don't have node coverage at. We have this backup layer it's more expensive for us to run. If Amazon costs about 93 cents per user hour, that's what it's currently running. And again, I expect that to go higher. Mm-hmm. And when we use these nodes, it costs between 2 and 7 cents per user hour, so we get it's a dramatic cut for the game developers. That middle layer that with these other partners, infrastructure partners that we're working with, they're about 17 cents. So we'll always go to, whenever a node's available, we'll always go to a retail node, these individual ones. Mm-hmm. It's better for our community. We get the decentralized revenue and put it out into local economies, and it's just a better deal for the game developers. But we do have that second layer, that backup layer that's always available, so we can handle overages, like you're saying, when our network gets too full. And then the other part of that is once the network's at 80% capacity, we go out and sell more nodes. Right? It's important for us. What we don't want to do, and we've seen again too many DePIN projects do this, is they sell a bunch of nodes out into the market, but there's no demand for their network.
Sure.
So people are spending lots of money on buying a node, and there's no demand. So they're like, "Well, I just spent $400 on this. I'm not earning anything off of it."
Right.
So what we're saying is we're going to put games live on that second layer, and then sell some nodes, and then put another game out there, and then sell more nodes, and we'll constantly kind of keep these things in balance. So the people who are operating the nodes are constantly getting a return that we don't want people to sit there. Because what would happen was they would stop using their node, and then our network would go down because there's not enough usage.
Sure. So then is that also a concern where what is the solution? What happens if you suddenly have a drastic drop in node users, or would you just go to that secondary backup layer that you're talking about essentially?
We go to the secondary backup layer.
Which it sounds like is primarily like ASICs, like you're saying Bitcoin miners, other various which I like that idea. If I owned miners and somebody was like, hey, they're at their end of life for, Bitcoin mining, they just can't handle the stress anymore. I'm like, was it possible I can use them to turn into a node for YOM? And if they're like, yeah, you could actually get another 1, 2, 3 years out of it, I'd be like, oh, I'm happy to do that then. You get to support a network, and then also I get paid out in your token, so I'm technically still like mining in a way and making money. So it's like best of both worlds, which again, anybody who's a miner, my understanding is the whole reason is it's more so to support a network. The money is just usually an end goal, unless you're trying to do it on a massive scale where you're like, money's the end goal. That's why we have 15,000 miners,
Right, yeah. And that's true, too. We are trying to make sure that we appeal to the gaming community to say, okay, you're helping games get those games out there that don't get normally noticed,
right,
but are still great games. We're giving them a home and a network to get them broadcast out.
Well, yeah, and I think a lot of people too just like the idea of, I mean, if you like a game, you like a network, you like a company, and somebody's like, here's a really simple way you can just support it on the daily and also get rewarded for it. I feel
Right.
like 90% of gamers are just like, well, yeah, I'm all for it. So many people would be like, I don't know. I'm sure there's so many COD users who are they're like, if you just leave your console in sleep mode overnight, we like use it to like farm data or something from when you're playing during the day, and you'll get some coins to spend on skins. Even if it was like 100 coins or 200 coins every like week, I'm sure people would do it because they'd be like, well, it adds up, and then I get a skin or something for free. Like I don't care.
Right.
Like I feel like they were getting that data anyways.
Well, so there's that element of it too. These first 10,000 nodes, and probably going into the future there would be more,
Hmm.
where we don't really necessarily need to have the YOM brand on them. What we're doing is talking to partners about saying, all right, so Game X, if you want the Game X logo on the license and on the node, and then you can go out and find all the Game X nodes that are operating in the YOM network, and the ones that are earning the most game hours or that are the most reliable, because we do a reliability score. You
Hmm.
can airdrop to them a Game X, special item that can only get by operating a node, right?
Right.
So some exclusivity and some brand loyalty that can be built into both the brand, both the game itself and into the node network.
Definitely. So wait, can you deliberate more on what you're talking about? Was you said reliability score?
Sure, yeah. So one of the important pieces is that we have for these so determine who gets workload. We check to see the speed to the end user. We check to see how many sessions are currently running, and we check to see that the node's reliable. We're relying on the nodes to be 99% uptime, meaning that when your node is operational, it doesn't force quit, it doesn't get unplugged or powered off unexpectedly, because that would break a person's gaming experience.
Right.
So if they don't keep a 99% uptime, we start not sending them work. We start breaking down their reputation score because they're not reliable. In the other direction, if people who are like, we run campaigns on our socials, so if you retweet and comment in our tweets, you earn some of these reputation points. The first series of nodes will be given a large sum of reputation points right at the gate because they're investing in early, and then each subsequent series will have less and less of these reputation coins out the gate. I say coins, but it's just really points. It's a point
Right.
system. But yeah, it's the same way that we rely on reputation for the internet from so many things. Reliability of the nodes, it has to be measured and it has to be rewarded or again punished if need be.
Gotcha. Well, so that's an interesting. I can't believe it took us 40, like almost 50 minutes talking to get to this point, but I didn't even think about it. Having that reputation score makes a ton of sense because I know users have to end up buying, the hardware itself to get from you to even do it. But then assuming, there are always those people who are just kind of looking for a quick pump and dump to get something, utilize and be like, anyways, I'm done with that and leave. That would tank the reputation score if that's all they're doing, and they're not going to be getting the work, so to speak, to be getting the
Right.
token to get the money. So you're really rewarding. That is a big thing in Web3, and I do actually like that. The airdrops were a huge thing where they're like, if people have been playing our system from day one for the last 3 years, like you're going to get a way bigger airdrop than the dude who's been playing for a month because like you've proven to us like you're a reliable end user and we want to keep you and we appreciate
Right.
you because you've probably done more for our network than the last 500 users we've brought on in the last like month or two, whatever their end up number being. So is that reputation score is really relies on how much you're saying, how much work they get sent. It's not if I just bought one today and got it, my reputation scores, let's just say it's 0. It's like I may not get any work until I bring my reputation score up to a certain level, I would guess.
Yeah. Well, again, if you're the only person in a region that's operating a node and
Sure.
the game's popular up there, you'll get work regardless, right? If you're somewhere in, like, say, Europe where we have a lot of nodes available,
Hmm.
then your reputation score becomes very, very important because you're competing with other people. So location is an important factor too. The size of your computers is an important factor. But so there's more than just one metric that designates who gets the most workload. You could have a really high reputation score, but if your node's operating out of Antarctica, you're not going to get a whole bunch of yield because there's no
Right.
one there playing games now, right?
No, that's fair. Well, and then so I correct me if I'm wrong. Did you say you're no longer you're not pushing the hardware as much because you've got plenty of node users out there, and now you're
Oh,
more,
no. We are absolutely getting people to come and sign up for the whitelist and get involved in and getting ready. We haven't shipped any of the hardware. Well, I'm sorry. We shipped
Gotcha.
a small amount of the hardware.
Sure.
I haven't done the whole layer out yet. What we're
Okay.
doing right now is building up the node sale, getting people to prepare for purchase the license, and then we'll get the hardware out to them. So we're still building the network. That's really the phase we're at now is starting to expand the network till we get more coverage.
Gotcha. Are you allowed to share what that initial price is for people? If they
I
get, if,
can,
assuming
yeah.
they get on the wait list, I guess.
The right now the retail price we have it at is $9.99.
Okay.
Um, and again, like I said, it's comparable to a graphics card, or actually less than a graphics card you would pay.
Right.
Um, Now there are probably going to be systems that we're coming up with where alternative pricing, where if you purchase at a lower price, the rewards are limited until you reach the entire $9.99 price. So you still operate, still get some reward, but it's not the maximum reward.
Mm-hmm.
There are schemes that we're looking at, and we're talking to getting some advice on how to do this the way that's most appropriate. But ultimately, it really does come down to the development of this has been pricey, and we want to have value in your hands and not just kind of be something that you get for $10 and then never use, because it doesn't help our network.
Right. Well, and you were talking about too that I believe you said it was an SSD. So longevity is there for,
Oh yeah,
for a very long time. It's not like a graphics card where if you're overclocking that thing, it's like in 3 years you may be like, how's it doing? You're like, it's running, but not what it used to be, So
Right.
longevity, I think, is a great thing too, for what you all need for your network and what you have going. Well, and then I'm curious too. You were talking earlier about the YOM token, which is a big way in which people who are participating as a node network get paid out. I also saw on your website there's another token, YRX token. Are those different tokens, and what's the difference between them, and what roles do they play?
The YRX is the reputation token. That's the reputation coin.
Okay.
It's a soul-bound token. I mean, it'll be we don't really put it into wallets just yet. Right now, we have it on a database. It'll be given to, as people as an actual token. We'll mint it, but it's a soul-bound. Like basically, whatever wallet it hits, it stays there. You can't trade it out. It's got no monetary value. It's really just a way that we keep score on your reputation.
Sure. Okay. Interesting. I would have never thought about it like that. That's a fascinating way to do it. I guess I'm so used to the EXP model that I would have just assumed there was something built in that way. But that I like that model. That makes sense as a reputation model.
I'm going to again talk to it's our CTO who's the brains behind that one as well. When he pitched it to me and he walked me through it, I was like, this is again another brilliant thing you've come up with. Let's go ahead and roll with it. So.
Well, and so you talked about how you feel like as a DePIN, which I guess which correct me if I'm wrong, is decentralized physical infrastructure network, correct?
Right.
I don't know if we spelled that out for anybody yet at this point. I feel like we have, but I can't remember. Do you feel like that your model, since you were talking about how you're doing things different from a lot of the other models you've seen, or other models you see maybe have not been successful, is where you're going. I mean, do you see this hopefully setting a structure for future DePINs, or maybe changing the model altogether for the industry?
I think if we see like we think we're going to, it'll be the way that people recognize, oh, this is the way you're supposed to do it, as opposed to the way they've already kind of launched into it. I think some of them, we're friendly with most of the DePINs, or at least we've had friendly conversations with them, but we don't necessarily talk too much directly to them. But if they listen to podcasts like this, they know what we're telling them they should be doing, and if they're not doing it, that's kind of, I guess, on them. I would say that we're going to set as explained to me, and as I think about it more, and as I get more understanding of all these different DePINs out there, I really do feel like what we're doing is not decentralizing just for decentralization's sake. Because again, our orchestrator itself is centralized.
Right.
We're decentralizing the parts that are important to decentralize, and not the ones that aren't. It's back in the day of the very early days of Web3 gaming, people were putting the NFTs out there for everything and anything, and they were just throwing the name NFT onto things because it was a hot buzzword. And unfortunately, Web3 is like this forever, right? Everything is, when it's a buzzword, people just start dropping it in. AI became the buzzword that everyone's saying, well, we're doing AI. Well, and what they're really saying is when they write their papers, they use some AI to help them write the paper, but they're not actually putting AI into their product, right? So a DePIN, has suffered a little bit of this as well. People were saying that we're DePIN, we're DePIN project because it helps them either attract investors or attract attention because it's a hot phrase. We really are. I don't want to come across too arrogant, but we really are building a DePIN. We really are using, again, only the parts that are important to decentralize and still using some centralization parts of it, but we don't have an ego about the whole thing has to be DePIN, and we're not using DePIN as just a buzzword for us. We're really truly building a decentralized network.
Well, sure. And so, I mean, maybe you covered it earlier, and I'm already forgetting, but why do you think the parts that you have decentralized are important to decentralize rather than centralize, other than, I guess, kind of what we've talked about, simply, server space expensive and not environmentally friendly? But are there other reasons for the decentralization outside of, those massive cost-cutting maneuvers and benefits to the end user?
It's really the lag. The lag is a big issue because you can,
Gotcha.
again, if you've got deep enough pockets, you can run off a central server till the, as long as you keep on bringing in money to pay for that central server.
Sure.
Again, even when the prices go up, you keep on doing that, except for, and again, I point to Google Stadia, the lag issue. It's the end user's too far away, and again, because those central servers are not necessarily built to stream games; they're built to other things.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to always have they're like I said with the Amazon server in Amsterdam and our node in Amsterdam, and the difference that we had in the lag to me here in the States, you're always going to have a lesser experience coming off of that cloud server than you would off of just somebody else's computer who's out here in the environment just hooked up directly to the internet. So that's the big important piece, is having the game streaming happen on the decentralized portion.
Right, because with bad lag, almost doesn't matter how great your game is, people just simply don't want to deal with it.
If you hit the fire button and it doesn't fire until a fraction of a second later, you're going to know it, right? And try to run around. So in the earlier test that we had, before we had this all smoothed out and working, they'd send me the link, and I I move my mouse, and a fraction of a second later, the camera would turn, and forget it, you're all over the place trying to recalibrate and move around, and it's just a horrible experience.
Well, yeah, exactly. Well, and I mean, it's funny too, because you're talking about earlier, you're like the buzzwords, and that is like, I keep waiting. I wonder what the next buzzword is going to be for Web3 gaming, because before that it was crypto gaming, and then somewhere in between there it was play to earn gaming, or maybe before that it was play to earn gaming, and now it's Web3 gaming, blockchain gaming at one point. It's weird to see how the buzzwords have changed, whereas Web3 gaming feels the most appropriate, but again, it's a buzzword. I'm curious what the next buzzword is going to be for this, and we're all going to have to shift our buzzwords around to let people know this is what we're doing. Or if it'll simply, what seems to be more the case is everything kind of falls to the wayside and is in the background so much more that people are like, it's just gaming. And it has these elements, and if you care to learn more about them, it's all on our site or in our white paper. But most people are just like, I don't care how the game works. I don't care what it does. I'm just playing the game, and that's my end goal. And that's most gamers, not as many people really care about the tech going on.
Well, Off the Grid kind of broke the seal on that one, I think. I think Off the Grid's got a good example of, okay, well, they use Avalanche in the background to handle their inventory transactions, that kind of thing. Basically, it's just a great game, right? It's a great looking game, anyways. I haven't played it myself yet.
Right.
But, so I think I think you're right. It's going to turn into just gaming, and then it has some blockchain stuff in the background that you probably don't even recognize is happening.
Right, because I frequently see people will go to like GDC was a big one where everybody's like, man, there was so much Web3 gaming there, and then you'll talk to like a traditional gamer, they're like, what is Web3 gaming? And if you mention NFTs, they're like, oh, that stuff, and you're like, no, it's different. Like that's just one of many elements. But I get how the sour taste of the buzzword has set for a lot of people outside the industry, unfortunately. And to be fair, as you said earlier, a lot of games didn't need NFTs; they were just throwing it in there because it was a big thing, and money sells.
Or the games that were Ponzi schemes that quickly got discovered to be Ponzi schemes, and everyone's like, well, so Web3 games are all Ponzi schemes and NFTs? Is that what's going on?
Right.
So we've shot ourselves in the foot a couple of times, I think, in the Web3 industry, which is, not you and I, but the by allowing for the people who are in here for a quick buck to proliferate the way that they did, and kind of it dragged down the name, the good name of all the people who are in the space to actually build real value and build real technology. It's a shame. I think we're going to build our way out of that. We're going to come out of that in the next couple of years, because I think blockchain again is only just going to get bigger and bigger. If you've been to some of the bigger conferences around the world this year, like I don't know how many you went to. I went to a couple of really big ones. So many places in the world are so into blockchain technology. Singapore was massive. I mean, it's on the subway. It's everywhere, all over that. That place. The U.S. might be a little bit late. I think because our regulations have made people a little skittish about working over here. I don't think Gary Gensler's doing us any kind of favors. If he goes away, that would be fine with me. So get somebody else in there who's actually pro the crypto industry and building up the space here in the States. I think once that happens, you'll see a huge growth in adoption, not just from traditional business sense, but also the gaming industry.
Right, and it's funny because we have so many companies based in the U.S. in that industry, period. But I feel like when they have the conferences in the U.S. compared to all the other let's say this. All the conferences everybody seems to be stoked to go to are never in the U.S. They're always in, Pacific Asia or,
Dubai
Singapore. Dubai. Yeah. They're always everywhere else, let alone getting to do international travel. Those are always the ones that people were like, I wish this energy was coming to the States, because if it was, I feel like every single every single one of these companies could get a VC round tomorrow just having an idea. And that's a crazy thing too, is just to see the amount of, I feel like every day I'm seeing another Web3 game company. They're like, so-and-so raised 4 million, 10 million, 15 million. And I'm like, it's just, it feels like people are bleeding money for it right now.
Right.
And who knows if that'll be great for all those companies or if it's just everyone thinks it's a great place to invest right now. Time will tell, but I think we're going to get some solid results out of it for sure.
Yeah, I respect well. Yeah.
Well, and so do you think there's some really big misconceptions about decentralized cloud networks that you've encountered with YOM? And then have you kind of just had to address these concerns in the way we've kind of been talking about it, being like, no, it's really more for this, not what you're thinking it can do or not do, rather?
Yeah, I don't know if it's necessarily DePIN gaming, but I would say DePIN in general and the idea of node sales has been, I think, we're nervous a little bit about the idea that other DePINs are selling nodes, they're selling hardware, but again, they don't have the demand yet on their network, so people are making purchases and then waiting for the purchase to pay back to them. So that bothers us a little bit. And again, we don't want to be painted with the broad brush of, if you just buy a node, it doesn't return anything to you, which is again why we're cautious about putting them out there as we have games and keeping that them in balance with each other. So I think that's the real caution I have, and the only advice to give is obviously do your own research on which node you get involved with. Because again, it's a buyer beware market.
Always. Well, was there a particularly difficult time for you and the YOM team when you were building the company? And like, were there any particularly memorable lessons you learned from that experience? Every startup has struggles. Was there a moment where you thought YOM might not succeed, and how did you push through?
Oh, it's been all roses. We've been having a great time.
Right. Every startup, all roses, all the time.
Yeah. So I think again, we didn't. So the CEO and I have known each other for about 2 years now. We worked together. We each had our separate projects, and we were different projects those two projects were partnered together. So he and I worked together for about a year before we found our CTO and YOM. I think when you have a 3-person dynamic, if I've got 2 brothers, and it can always be like, these 2 guys are talking and then these 2 guys are talking. So we've been very good about making sure that never happens where one person feels being left out by the other 2. And it's really been a great dynamic. There's nothing really I can say that bad thing has happened. So, gosh, if I try to look back to say, is there any part of the struggle, has there been any kind of real struggle for us? Only that we wanted to work faster, I guess, in, getting the alpha network set up and getting these tests done. But in reality, building technology takes a long time, and we're just having to be patient. And I like where we've gotten so far, and the proof that we have in the test cases we had. We went out to say, you know what? Here's what the one challenge we did have, since I'll go into this story. So we went to Singapore for Token 2049, and it was the first time we were taking a node out with us live. I was actually the one. I have my gaming laptop that I brought with me, and I was going to run our node off that laptop and allow people to play through our Wi-Fi router to play a game on Telegram. And the night before I was doing the big setup, we were actually showing it. After Token 2049 was Breakpoint, right? And Star Atlas had the impact event. They had a whole section of Breakpoint to themselves, and they asked us to set up a booth there and show off our node because we're talking with Star Atlas about doing experiments with Star Atlas and on the YOM network,
right?
Which I think I can talk about. Which I've already done. So, anyways,
I've had Star Atlas on here too, but they didn't mention it then. But I'm sure they would be happy to mention it.
Again,
now.
we're just one of the many experiments that they're doing. They're interested in being on a DePIN, whether it's ours or not. I'm sure that's to be determined, right? Anyways, the night before setting up that node, we had run some tests and it wasn't working again. So I was in my hotel room trying to work it through with the engineer in Amsterdam, and for him, he stayed overnight. I was talking to him at like 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. I finally realized, I did the math in my head. I'm like, wait a minute, it's 3 a.m. where you are right now, right? He says, yeah, it's 3 a.m. I said, what are you doing? He said, I brought a pillow, I brought a blanket. I'm sleeping in the office to make sure that this node goes off without a hitch at the Breakpoint event. And it did. We eventually figured out what was going wrong. It was the way we had our Wi-Fi set up. It was a pretty easy fix after we've diagnosed everything else. So
it's not always funny.
Bringing a live demo to a big event and making a big stink about it, which is what we did. The big build up.
Right.
That was stressful.
Sure.
Right. But unfortunately, we have an engineering team that kind of can put up with that level of stress.
Well, yeah, and there's nothing worse with when you have your moment to shine if you don't shine, even if it was truly things like so simple beyond your, beyond anything you can control. People go, oh, well, it's not really all it's cracked up to be, and you're
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
no, it was a
right.
genuine mistake, and then it sucks how you sully your name before you even really get a chance for it to grow. So I'm glad it all worked out in the long run, because that is the hardest thing. I mean, you can always read about one of my favorite tech demos ever is how when they first unveiled the iPhone, they're like they had to fake it. So the one
Right.
Steve Jobs had wasn't really what was showing on the screen, because they're like they hadn't figured out how to make it run properly yet. But they're like, it did
Yeah.
its job of wowing everyone over, and they're like, all right, people think it works this way. We know we can make it work this way if we have enough time. They're like, this is what's got to happen now, guys. And
Yeah.
so it is always fascinating to see those tech demos go off. So I get the importance of them really to go off without a hitch, or at least go off more smoothly than, bumpy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and so what's been like the most rewarding part for you of working with YOM, and personally and for the company? Is there a particular like achievement that stand out so far, or any highlight along your journey maybe?
And I thoroughly enjoy our team. I think, again, our CTO is probably one of the smartest guys I've ever worked with. And the stable of people I've worked with before has always been stellar. But this guy is just really, truly brilliant. And the way that he thinks about things, and the way that he also, the give and take that the three of us can have with each other. I think really the people that I'm working with, the whole tech team, everybody there, it's probably been the highlight for me. I mean, I love that with the tech we're building. I love spending time. I do a lot of writing for our Medium account of how this technology will be used in various cases, the social media case and the commerce case and the cloud gaming, all those things. But really, I think it comes down to working with people that you like working with, and that's been the case so far with our team.
Well, it definitely makes everything easier, right? If you like the people,
Yeah, yeah,
and you like the work you do, it feels a
yeah,
lot. Some days it's still work, but most days it's more excitement than anything, right?
yeah.
Well, and lastly, like, what advice would you give to younger generations looking to start maybe their entrepreneurial journey, or maybe their Web3, sustainable journey, their technology journey? With your experience, do you think there are any particular keys to success in a rapidly evolving industry, and how can young entrepreneurs make a meaningful impact?
Sure. Two things I'll try to remember, but I'll try to skip the second one. First thing I would say is, if you're really into the gaming space, learn Unreal. Part of what we're building, part of our goal is to have a place for user-generated content. The tools for Unreal right now have gotten so easy to use, and with a little bit of tutorials on YouTube and some AI, you can build a game pretty rapidly, like over a weekend. But in the spirit of, again, uploading a video to YouTube, we expected our network. Right now, it's a very simple drag and drop interface to put your game onto our network, but just the network's not live yet. So if you like to make games, or if you have an interest in making games, I would say learn Unreal, and we're going to have a network for you to upload it to get it out to as many people as possible. So that would be the first piece of advice. The second piece of advice is advice that I got when I was going to art school, and it serves me the entire way through my career as as a project manager, as a producer, is learn how to take feedback, and even learn how to take feedback from people who are not good at giving you feedback, because that's going to be the case you're going to be into. You're going to run into that more often than not,
Right.
not just at work, but also at home with your family, your wife, your mom, all that stuff, right? So they're not necessarily skilled in giving feedback, so they're giving you information that you probably can use, but not in a very gentle way, maybe. So learn how to take out of the feedback that you're getting the important pieces, leave behind the parts that don't make sense. Ask good questions, don't take it all personal. Find out if there's a grain of truth in there, and then operate on it. So learning how to take feedback from people who aren't good at giving it to you. There's a great book called Thanks for the Feedback. It's a management training book, but it's a really, really good book. It's the same folks who wrote Difficult Conversations, and both of those books are really well worth reading if you get your hands on them.
Okay. No, I'll definitely add that to my list. Well, and then really the last question I have is, we didn't, sometimes I round about it in the beginning, but usually when I'm worried about time, I round about it at the end. You talked about some of the games you developed. I'm genuinely curious, like, what were some of your favorite games growing up, or maybe some of your favorite games now that you're still playing, even if they're not current games, maybe they're older games that you just still like to come back to,
Man, what changed my life was Half-Life, the very first Half-Life. We started playing that game when it first came out. We started playing the Battle Royale at work, which was fun. But just the game itself, I mean, the original, campaign and going through the whole thing, it lasted for hours. I still can hear if someone just plays like one of the alien sounds, they could be across the room and I could hear that, the one dog barking or something like that, and I'm like, oh, I know that sound, right? Half-Life was still blows me away how good that game was. And the second one was great as well, but the first one just opened up my eyes to what all games could be, the storytelling elements of it. So I'm always gonna default and say that was like my favorite game experience, even though there were games I played earlier that blew me away, and Resident Evil 4 and the second Tomb Raider, going back that far. But Half-Life always kind of a little has a space in my heart. Katamari Damacy and Journey, two games that had like great visual style and great game mechanics that just did so avant-garde, like so different from everything else. I gravitated to games like that as well. But I'll always point at Half-Life because that was the one that was really sucked me in for a long, long time.
No, that's a great one to point to. I mean, it's a cult classic for a reason. It is funny with Katamari Damacy. That was a game somebody showed me in like middle school, and it's so funny being like that young. I didn't think about it as older. I was like, this makes total sense for a game. And as I got older, I was like, what a weird concept for a game that executes so fun and well. That just, it's one of those weird games where the kid logic, or like when you don't have like the full adult logic, you're like, yeah, this makes total sense. And as an adult, you're just like, how did you even spin this and get the green light on this? And you're like, this is the whole plot's just to roll things up in a giant ball and create stars in the universe. Somebody's like, go for it. You have my full support. Like,
yeah, right.
Whereas at least with Half-Life, you could be like, I'm trying to make like one of the first like cinematic storytelling experiences in like games, along with like, or the progression of, it's like Red Dead Redemption 2. Like, I knew so many people who were not gamers who were like, that was an amazing game. I was like, well, it was, but it was also like a modern Western for plenty of audiences to be able. There were some people I knew who were like, I didn't even play the game. I just watched all the cutscenes online back to back, and it was like a multi-hour movie for me. And they're like, it was amazing. And I was like, if that's what you got out of it, that's great. There's nothing wrong with that, But yeah, that's interesting. I'm glad you referenced Katamari Damacy. I feel like it's gotten a resurgence lately, but there's still not that many people when I bring it up that know about that game ever.
Nope, yeah. If you get your hands on a copy of that, I would say play it just for the fun of it, because it's really just and be prepared to like live through a trippy experience, because it's trippy.
Right, yeah, and that's what I always thought, is it was one of the most colorful games I had ever played up until that point. I think I remember being a kid and being like, man, I can't, because it was on PS2 when I first played it. I was like, man, I can't believe like. Because that was before you really had like huge field of visions, and so you could see like a lot of stuff in an area, and there was always so much stuff going on in every scene that I was like, man, I can't believe it can process all this and not like lag or freeze up or anything. Now going back, I mean, like, and knowing what a powerhouse the PS2 was at the time makes total sense. But same with the GameCube. Like I remember the first time I played Metroid Prime, I was like, I can't believe they can get these graphics on this thing. Like this little tiny cube, I was like, I blew my mind, and it still does to this day. That's a game for me. I'm always like, it held up great. Like the graphics still are amazing and very immersive for that game for me on that system. But was there anything we missed that we didn't talk about related to YOM, your personal journey, things along the way that you're just burning to talk about?
I think we got it. We did a good job, I think, covering pretty much all the bases. I'd say just the way to get people involved in YOM is to send them over to our Discord or our Telegram group. Just go to our website. I guess the tricky part, our website is yom.oo. So people go to yom.com or yom.net or yom, they'll never find it, right? So as far as I know, we've cornered the market on the .oo websites. I don't actually know how we ended up with it, but this is what we've had since the beginning. So YOM, YOM.oo. And from there, our Telegram group is very active. Our Discord group is very active. Our Medium, again, I'm pretty proud of our Medium site, our Medium articles, because I try to pump one of those out a week and talk about all the different future use cases, not just the partnership announcements, but more than that goes there. And our YouTube channel. So we're doing every Thursday night, we're doing a town hall. I say Thursday night, but in the States, it's actually Thursday at noon. We do a live broadcast, kind of like an interview with either our partner or some people from our development team to talk about our progress and kind of keep people informed. So our YouTube channel is starting to get really bulked up as well.
Awesome. I honestly didn't even know you could have .oo as a web address.
What
does that even stand for?
You cut out for a second. I didn't get what you.
I was saying I can't even believe .oo is a web address. Like, what is it?
Yeah.
I wonder what it stands for. Like,
it's got to be something European, because again, the studio was founded in Holland, in Amsterdam, Netherlands.
All I can find on Google real quick is a top-level domain name in the domain name system of the internet. I've just never heard of it till I'm just fascinating. Well, I guess it's been around since 2014. So you're the first I've ever seen with that. So fascinating. But I'll make sure to have links to everything you mentioned in the show notes for everyone listening. So easy access, whatever platform you're listening on, you should be able to find and get to everything you need for YOM real quick. Especially that .oo. If anybody finds out what that means, send me an email or comment on this episode, because I'm very curious to know the origins of it. Jeff, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so
Thanks,
much
man.
for being on the show. Love hearing everything you're doing at YOM. Love hearing about the tech. Looking forward to everything y'all accomplish and become the greatest DePIN out there.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.